There's been lots of pictures of the general wounded and lying dead on the pavement, and that's obviously going to have a really strong psychological effect on other Russian potential targets.
Ukraine's state security service has claimed it was behind the assassination of a top Russian general in Moscow this week, and Ukraine's intelligence sources have been telling the Times that the assassination was part of their campaign to hunt down and kill Russian war criminals wherever in the world they are. Maxim Tucker has this in-depth story for the paper, and he's with us now. Maxim, good morning.
Good morning.
So then, what do we know about the scale of Ukraine's operations? And I suppose with the sidebar that it's good propaganda for Ukraine to claim the assassination this week as part of a wider threat against potential war criminals. What do we understand about the scale of it?
Well, we do know that the Ukrainian military intelligence service and the SBU have been carrying out assassinations inside occupied territory for some time. The difference is they don't usually claim it, they don't usually announce it. It's not usually done in tandem with a criminal trial proceeding, as they did. They assassinated the general after they formally announced he was a suspect in a war crimes case. And I think the difference is here that's designed to send a very clear message to the Russians that the cost of this war is going to be higher for you. You're going to be paying the price inside Russia, and to try and compel the Russians to come to the peace talks, have a reason to come to the peace talks that's beyond Donald Trump telling them that they should do that. Ukraine has also looked to target Russian war criminals from the Wagner group where they're fighting abroad, including in Sudan, in Mali, and in Syria. And we've seen some quite spectacular results from that. So this is something that Ukraine is obviously doing. The difference is that they're now announcing it publicly, and they're sending a clear message to the Russians.
Yeah, and is the message getting through, I suppose? To what extent do you have to, in Ukraine's case, do you have to continue an operation like this in order that it is effective and impactful on your enemy?
Yes, they will have to continue these assassinations to demonstrate that they continue to have this reach, particularly seeing as a suspect in this assassination has been arrested pretty quickly, and he seems to be revealing a lot of the kind of the work that went into that assassination, if the FSB is to be believed. I found that it was quite difficult to talk to Ukrainian intelligence services after that arrest, which does indicate that maybe there is some truth to the suspect who was arrested. Is the right
Sure, sorry, yeah. In terms of the sophistication of how they are going about targeting people, what can we say about that? Are these sophisticated operations like the one that we've seen in recent days?
The sophistication, they're using modern technology. They had a dash cam strapped onto a rental car that has obviously live streamed the killing, and there's been recordings of the killing posted online, which obviously emphasizes the propaganda effect that they're looking for. It's going to be more scary. There's been lots of pictures of the general wounded and lying dead on the pavement, and that's obviously going to have a really strong psychological effect on other Russian potential targets.
Yeah, of course. Maxim, it's a really fascinating article. Lots more detail for listeners to go and read, and we appreciate you telling us a bit about it on the air just now. Thank you very much indeed. That's Maxim Tucker.
It's nearly 3 years since Russia invaded Ukraine, and there had been concerns in Kyiv that support from the West might drop under the incoming Trump administration. But it seems the president-elect is softening his line, saying he will continue the supply of weapons, though he wants NATO countries to increase their defence spending to 5% of GDP. We can speak now to Alexander Mereshko, who is a Ukrainian MP and chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee and has actually just returned from talks in Washington. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, thank you for being with us. Before we get on to the details of your talks in Washington and indeed what Donald Trump has said, as we approach the end of 2024, what would you say is your assessment of the state of the war right now?
Well, it was a difficult year for us when we're still going through very harsh winter, because almost each day we're under attack from Russian troops, Russian bombardments, shelling of including Kyiv. Sometimes it reminds 1940 and Blitz in London. But we remain defiant and we remain hopeful. And we are not going to surrender. We'll continue to fight until we restore our territorial integrity. And we are hopeful also about the new administration in Washington.
So tell me more about that. You say you're hopeful. Is that because there has been this change in tone that Trump is now saying, well, from people who have been close to talks and very close to the new Trump administration, that he will continue to give weapons to Ukraine, despite what he said during his presidential campaign and indeed once he was elected?
Well, the truth is that it was quite expectable, because we know that there is a huge difference between a rhetoric during election campaign on the election trail and real policy when new president comes to power, holds his office. So it was expected, and I have returned only yesterday from Washington, D.C., where we had lots of meetings with congressmen, senators, representatives of the White House. And we talked also to the Republicans who support Trump, and all of them are very optimistic about continuation of aid from the new administration.
And so what were they telling you in your discussions with people close to Donald Trump? What did they say to you? What reassurance did they give you?
Well, basically, they said that we shouldn't have paid much attention to the statements made in the heat of presidential campaign by the candidate for presidency, Trump, and we should more pay attention to the actions, the deeds of the new president. And Trump is rather ambitious politician, and he wants to be a strong politician, which automatically means that he doesn't want to look weak in the eyes of the world, in the eyes of public opinion in the United States. And they're also optimistic and hopeful.
And so, I mean, does that mean there was lots of conversation, wasn't there, during the presidential campaign that Trump was saying, I can end the war on day one? Are you getting a sense now that his team is backing away from that statement? Because it did seem somewhat implausible when it was said. Is there a realization check now taking place amongst his team?
Well, I think it's good that the President Trump wants to stop the war as soon as possible. And actually, there is such a chance to do it within 24 hours. And this solution to end the war within 24 hours is to admit Ukraine to NATO. That would stop the war. But what we can see, the President Trump is beginning to realize how difficult the matter is. And he already himself said that he understands that it will take more time for solution and stopping Putin's aggression against Ukraine.
You mentioned the idea of stopping the war in a day by Ukraine becoming a member of NATO. Did you get a sense that that was something that Donald Trump supports?
At the moment, I didn't get such a sense. We didn't discuss this issue. I mean that with those people with whom we communicated, we, of course, raised this issue, and we keep raising this issue all the time, because we understand that the only reliable security guarantee and guarantee of our survival as a state is NATO membership. There is no any other option. But I think that it will take some time to persuade the new president that it's a strong need. It's in the best interest of Europe, in the best interest of NATO and the United States to admit Ukraine to NATO.
I'm interested that you actually nominated Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. Just explain that to us.
Well, first of all, in my opinion, it is an expression, a gesture of appreciation of what was done by President Trump during his first term in office, because he was the first American president who started to provide lethal weaponry to Ukraine. For example, javelins provided by the United States, they had helped us to repel Russian attacks right after the beginning of the full-scale invasion. And additionally, from my perspective, this nomination is a gesture of hope that President Trump will manage to bring true peace, just peace. By that, I mean not appeasement of the aggressor at the expense of Ukraine. I mean just peace firmly based on international law, principles of international law, and the UN Charter.
Alexander, thank you so much for speaking to us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. That's Alexander Mereshko, who is Ukrainian MP, chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee. He's just returned from talks in Washington and talking very much about he is hopeful about a Donald Trump presidency. He says that speaking to his team, they said that you shouldn't listen to the heat of what was said in the presidential campaign, which in itself is very interesting. Who'd have ever thought that a politician would say something in an election campaign and then change their mind when they come to office? But it sounds like, Donald Trump is saying, actually, if there can be 5% of GDP contributed by NATO members, he is then happy to continue the military support of the US to the Ukraine. Interestingly, reading the front of the FT Weekend today as well, one person close to the talks to understand what Trump is saying says he would settle for 3.5% of GDP by NATO members. Currently, it's 2%. The UK puts in 2.3%. But the deal for that would be, if you only put 3.5% in, you would get a more favourable trading term with the US.